Hello, everyone, and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham. We're live in the nation's capital of Washington, D.C. And over the next few minutes, we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is in Panama to meet its leaders and attend a security conference. The visit follows President Donald Trump's threats to take back the Panama Canal over growing Chinese interference. Russia says it has retaken one of the last key villages in the Ukraine-held Kursk region. This latest Russian assault comes amid U.S.-led ceasefire talks. South Korea's military says its troops were forced to fire warning shots after 10 North Korean soldiers briefly crossed the heavily fortified border. The Philippines increases its maritime arsenal amid growing tensions with China. Manila takes possession of a Corvette-class warship, part of its two-vessel deal with South Korea's Hyundai Heavy Industries. And Italy's competition watchdog fines the Colosseum's ticket handling firm and 6 tour operators more than $21 million for hoarding tickets, forcing tourists to pay more. We begin in Washington today, where President Donald Trump's tariff war on China has taken a dramatic turn. What started as a warning has now escalated into one of the fierce trade battles that the world has seen. Now, less than 48 hours after China slapped a 34% retaliatory tariff on American goods, President Trump has hit back with an additional 50% tariff on all Chinese imports, meaning that U.S. companies could now face a total rate of 104% on Chinese imports, as it comes on top of 20% tariffs already put in place in March and the 34% announced last week.
That tariff isn't removed by tomorrow at 12 o'clock. We're putting a 50% tariff on above the tariffs that we put on. So they've gone for years. They've become a rich country because of people, again, that were in the White House that allowed this to happen. Hundreds of billions of dollars a year they'd make on us on trade. And it shouldn't be that way.
Now, taking to his Truth Social platform, President Trump warned, quote, any country that retaliates will be met with higher tariffs immediately, end quote. The commander-in-chief added that if China does not pull back its latest tariffs by April 8th, the 50% hike will take effect on April 9th. Now, so far, China shows no signs of backing down. In fact, Beijing has promised to fight to the end, calling Trump's latest move a, quote, mistake on top of a mistake, end quote.
The U.S. abuse of tariffs severely infringes on the legitimate rights and interests of various countries, violates World Trade Organization rules, damages the rules-based multilateral trading system, and disrupts the stability of the global economic order. If the U.S. disregards the interests of both countries and the international community and insists on engaging in a tariff war and trade war, China will fight to the end.
The Chinese Commerce Ministry even criticized the U.S. for what it calls economic blackmail and warned of strong countermeasures to protect China's interests. Meanwhile, Chinese President Xi Jinping is gearing up for important talks in Europe and Southeast Asia. Trade tensions with the European Union, especially over Chinese electric vehicle exports, are heating up as well. But as President Trump widens his tariff net, even countries that benefited from past trade shifts like Malaysia and Vietnam are now facing U.S. pressure. The message from Washington is loud and clear: retaliate and face consequences. But Beijing's message is equally firm: they will not back down without a fight. And as the clock ticks toward President Trump's April 9th deadline, all eyes are on Beijing. Will China fold, or will this trade war turn into something far bigger? And it seems like it's not just China, but President Trump's billionaire buddy Elon Musk is also upset with the commander-in-chief's tariff plans. As per reports, the Tesla CEO made personal appeals to the president to roll back the sweeping tariffs, but the attempted intervention brought no success. And now President Trump's one loyal circle of business titans is also starting to splinter as markets swing and fortunes shrink. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon, a heavyweight on Wall Street, warned the tariffs could trigger inflation and nudge the economy towards a recession. The loyalty is thinning and the whispers are getting louder. Our next report looks at who's still holding the line and who might be ready to jump ship.
If reports are to be believed, billionaire Elon Musk has appealed to President Donald Trump to reverse sweeping new tariffs. And despite the direct outreach and mounting social media pressure, the Tesla CEO and Doge in charge's efforts have failed so far. At the same time, he publicly criticized Trump's trade advisor Peter Navarro. Over the weekend, Musk called Navarro's credentials into question. A PhD in econ from Harvard is a bad thing, Musk wrote on X. However, this isn't the first time Musk has opposed the government's involvement in trade. In fact, back in 2020, Tesla sued the Biden administration over earlier tariffs. And now, Musk is warning of deeper economic damage. He has proposed a free trade zone between the US and Europe.
I hope that the United States and Europe can establish a very close partnership. We obviously are, there's an alliance already, but I'm hopeful that there can be a very close relationship with America and Europe. I hope it is agreed that both Europe and the United States should move, ideally, in my view, to a zero tariff situation, effectively creating a free trade zone between Europe and North America. That would be that's what I hope occurs.
Musk isn't alone in raising alarms. There are more in Trump's inner circle. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon warned that tariffs will slow down growth. In his shareholder letter, Dimon said they could push inflation higher and increase the risk of recession. Republican Senator Ted Cruz also called the tariffs enormously risky. On his podcast, Cruz said, "A tariff is a tax on American consumers." In fact, the Republican senator even urged the commander-in-chief to listen to angel Elon Musk on trade.
Elon is one of the angels. This is a good voice that is focused on U.S. jobs that I hope the president is listening to.
Podcaster Ben Shapiro also echoed that warning. On his show, he called the tariff plan a massive tax increase. He even questioned its constitutionality and economic logic. Meanwhile, Joe Rogan, an influential podcast host who endorsed Trump on the eve of the election, also criticized a separate Trump policy that mistakenly deported a legal immigrant. He called the error horrific and scary.
The thing is, you got to get scared that people who are not criminals are getting, lassoed up and deported and sent to, El Salvador prisons.
The backlash is growing inside corporate boardrooms too. Eli Lilly CEO David Ricks warned of job and research cuts. Just weeks ago, he had praised Trump's manufacturing push, but now he's unsure about the future. Billionaire Bill Ackman, who supported Trump after the assassination attempt, called the tariffs economic nuclear war. He urged the White House to pause the plan before it's too late. Despite rising pressure, Trump seems unfazed. He said on Monday that the tariffs will continue, but he hinted he's open to deals that benefit the U.S. economy.
We have many countries that are coming to negotiate deals with us, and they're going to be fair deals, and in certain cases they're going to be paying substantial tariffs. There'll be fair deals.
As Trump's trade war escalates, the divide within his circle is widening. Once loyal supporters are beginning to speak out. Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and Washington are watching closely. And behind closed doors, more may be waiting to break their silence.
And now to the Middle East, where President Donald Trump said the United States and Iran will hold direct talks over a possible nuclear deal on April 12th. President Trump refused to give details about who will all participate in this meeting or where exactly the negotiations will in fact take place. Speaking beside visiting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, President Trump reiterated that Iran must not be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons. He also added that if the nuclear talks with Iran remain unsuccessful, the Islamic Republic is, quote unquote, going to be in great danger.
We're having direct talks with Iran, and they've started. It'll go on Saturday. We have a very big meeting, and we'll see what can happen. And I think everybody agrees that doing a deal would be preferable to doing the obvious. I think if the talks aren't successful with Iran, I think Iran is going to be in great danger. And I hate to say it, great danger, because they can't have a nuclear weapon.
Even as President Trump refused to reveal the venue of the April 12th talks, Tehran confirmed that the meeting will take place in Oman, which has acted as a mediator between the two countries in recent years. Now, in a post on X, the Iranian foreign minister said there will be indirect high-level talks between Tehran and Washington, suggesting Oman's role as a potential mediator. And the Iranian foreign minister called it as much an opportunity as it is a test, adding that the ball is now in America's court. The development over U.S.-Iran talks comes days after President Donald Trump threatened to bomb Iran if it does not reach a new nuclear deal with Washington. Now, in response, the Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei said that the U.S. would receive a strong blow if Tehran is, in fact, attacked. Now, despite President Trump's most direct threats, Iran has previously rejected his call for direct talks over the issue of acquiring nuclear weapons. Iran sees President Trump's unilateral withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear deal as a major diplomatic betrayal. And during the potential April 12th talks, the negotiators would face the challenge of bridging this exact trust deficit between the two sides.
The
fact that the U.S. president says we are ready to negotiate with Iran invites negotiations. This implies that we are open to negotiations. We want to negotiate, make peace, and avoid conflict, but Iran refuses to negotiate. But why is Iran unwilling to negotiate? Look at the facts. We sat at the negotiating table for years, reached a complete agreement and signed it, and this very person took it off the table and tore it up. How can you negotiate with such a person?
And with stakes high on both sides, April 12th could mark either a new beginning or a new reference point of deepening divide between the U.S. and Iran. And back here in Washington, the Supreme Court has handed President Trump a victory by lifting a lower court order that barred his administration from deporting alleged Venezuelan gang members using a wartime law. The 5-4 ruling by the conservative-dominated Supreme Court will allow the administration to resume deportations under the 1798 Alien Enemies Act, or the AEA, which had been previously blocked by a federal judge. But the court also ruled that migrants subject to deportation under the AEA, which has only previously been used during wartime, must be given the opportunity to challenge their removal.
Detainees must receive notice after the date of this order that they are subject to removal under the Act. The notice must be afforded within a reasonable time and in such a manner as will allow them to actually seek habeas relief in the proper venue before such removal occurs.
Now, President Trump, who campaigned to expel millions of undocumented migrants, welcomed the ruling in a post on Truth Social.
The Supreme Court has upheld the rule of law in our nation by allowing a president, whoever that may be, to be able to secure our borders and protect our families and our country itself. A great day for justice in America.
Now, the case began after a lower court had temporarily blocked the deportation of alleged Venezuelan gang members to El Salvador on March 15th, ruling that the 1798 AEA needed further scrutiny. And the commander-in-chief alleges these migrants are members of the Tren de Aragua, or the TDA gang, which is conducting irregular warfare against the United States. At least 137 people have been reportedly deported by the administration under the AEA, a move widely condemned by human rights groups. The act, which was last used during World War II, grants President Trump sweeping powers to order the detention and deportation of natives or citizens of an enemy nation without following the usual processes. Now this ruling comes as another judge temporarily blocked plans to end deportation protections for hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans, a move praised by Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. With the Supreme Court's support, the Trump administration secures a major win, but the legal battles over immigration policies are far from over. And we end today with Venezuela. The country is back on high alert after facing repeated economic turmoil over the years. President Nicolas Maduro has declared a state of economic emergency, and he's blaming the U.S. tariffs and President Trump for destabilizing the country. Washington's tariffs target nations importing Venezuelan oil, and President Maduro says the move is an assault on its financial stability. Now his government is scrambling to deal with President Trump's actions. Our final report has the latest.
Venezuela is facing economic pressure once again. After years of economic turmoil due to sanctions and inflation, the country is scrambling again. This time due to new U.S. tariffs unveiled by Donald Trump.
So, if you look at that,
President Nicolas Maduro has declared a state of economic emergency. Blaming the U.S., he said, Trump's tariffs are designed to bring the world to its knees and force countries to surrender to its dominance.
What is happening is not due to natural causes, but to geopolitical causes. The desire, the ambition to dominate and surrender and sanction the world. They are sanctioning the world to surrender it to their feet.
At the center of the storm is oil, the lifeline of Venezuela's economy. On March 24th, the U.S. imposed tariffs on countries that imported Venezuela crude. It affected major importers like India, China, and Spain. It was part of an executive order signed by Trump and was intended to pressure buyers to cut ties with Venezuela's oil industry. And to contain this damage, Maduro has now invoked his constitutional powers.
This is a declaration of economic emergency where I assume special functions, constitutionally extraordinary to advance in defense of Venezuela's economy and its impulse and development, and have all instruments, of which we have consensus with all productive sectors of the country. We will explain step by step how we come out on top, just as we did in 2016, as we did in the pandemic.
This is a scene that feels eerily similar. Maduro's mention of 2016 is a reminder of the last time his government declared an economic emergency. The South American nation was already in freefall that year. 2015 had been brutal. Oil prices crashed, inflation surged, and food shortages worsened. But what followed was a total economic breakdown. Prices surged uncontrollably as Venezuela's currency collapsed. Basic essentials disappeared from stores. Everyday products were being sold at the prices of luxurious items. And hospitals ran out of supplies and medical care. The desperation led to protests, supermarket raids, and clashes. As the riots erupted, Maduro expanded his military power and put the military in charge of food distribution. The world watched as Venezuela spiraled further downward. Maduro often blames economic struggles on sanctions by Washington. The US and other countries have accused his government of corruption, human rights abuses, and rigging elections to stay in power. The foreign sanctions aim to freeze Venezuelan assets abroad and limit its access to international banking. Later, these sanctions expanded. They targeted Venezuela's state-run oil sector, further squeezing the economy. So the current situation isn't uncharted territory for Maduro. With another emergency order and another call to shield the country, history seems to be repeating itself. It is the same script and the same players, but the stakes even higher. The question isn't whether Venezuela can survive this chaos, but will it ever break free from the cycle?
That's Firstpost America for this Tuesday, April 8th. I'm Eric Ham signing off from our studios here in Washington, D.C. Thanks everyone so much for tuning in.